Solo Wing Pixy, the buddy and enemy. Solo Wing Pixy is the player's wingman for Ace Combat Zero. Ace Combat Zero itself has a rather unique style of storytelling. It has the standard in-game story dialogue of all other games, but it also has cutscenes which are in the style of a documentary following a journalist trying to uncover Cypher, the player character, and what he did during the Balkan War. Pixy has the most interviews of this style, and his interviews open the game and close the game, and as well as one in the middle which varies with the player's style at that point. The first mission introduces Pixy and Cypher, who are the mercenary Garm team who are hired by Ustio to repel Balkan bombers from an attack on their base and help repel Balkan from their country. The second mission is quite similar, while also showing Pixy's interactions with characters other than Cypher, like the AWACS for the game Eagle Eye. The first Ace Squadron battle in B7R occurs in Mission 3, where Pixy comments on how different Ace Squadron's words hold no meaning if they can't prove their worth as pilots, such as with Indigo and him claiming to fight for a real cause.
Yo, buddy, you got everyone fired up and believing in miracles.
Mission 4 shows the beginning of an allied counterattack against the Balkans, and Pixy's growing admiration of Cypher and his abilities. Mission 5 shows the first foreign recognition of Cypher, with Pixy commenting on how his reputation has brought Allied morale back up. And Mission 6 features the liberation of the Allied capital, Directus, and the second base battle, with Pixy having grown to trust Cypher to cover his 6, and Cypher trusting Pixy to do the same.
Just look at the view. There's not much difference between those countries from up here.
Mission 7 involves the commencement of the invasion of Belka. It's foreshadowing for Pixy's fate later in the game, where he is commenting on how similar the countries are. He's also shown to be quite cynical with regards to the Allies claiming a nuclear inspection as an excuse to invade Belka. Mission 8 has Cypher and Pixy attacking a Balkan airbase, only to be countered by a Balkan superweapon called Excalibur, which is a part of the Arthurian mythology that Ace Combat Zero uses. Pixy and Cypher are the only ones to make it out of the encounter alive, and are then tasked to destroy it in Mission 9. Mission 9 introduces the fourth character that the player truly is seen in Ace Combat Zero. For context, there's Cypher himself, Pixy, there's Eagle Eye, and then there's PJ. PJ is the counterpart of Pixy. He's a young new recruit and is optimistic about it, while Pixy is pessimist, most likely because he's already seen what's happened during war, and has seen too much of it.
Flying with all those ideals swimming around in your head is gonna get you killed.
Mission 10 is Mayhem, the big, massive air battle at Area B7R. The gameplay is pretty standard dogfight, but what makes it notable in terms of Pixy and PJ is Pixy and PJ debating their reasons for flying. With PJ claiming to fight for peace being the idealistic character he is, while Pixy is mocking PJ for it, while him saying that while he's flying for peace, he's helping shed blood on the ground. He also claims that PJ's focus on ideals will eventually lead to his death, which, in a way, it does. Mission 11, the Inferno, as the darkest event in any Ace Combat game. This is the bombing of Hoffnung, which is where Ocean bombers have placed priority on destroying the city over accurately bombing other military targets. Adding to this is the fact that the Balkans themselves decided to burn everything to the ground, with radio chatter heard indicating that the Balkans are putting priority on withdrawing their military, not their civilians, resulting in large casualties from the event. The bombing of Hoffnung also was criticized by Pixy, with him criticizing the OCA bombers, and after they've stopped firing Tomahawk cruise missiles, calling them crazy for using that kind of ordnance in the city when they have clear air superiority. Unused voice lines for the game also have Pixy suffering some form of PTSD from the event, suggesting that he may have encountered something similar happen possibly in his childhood. However, these aren't considered canon as in it, but most people regard it as a fanon.
This is where we go our separate ways.
Mission 12 is the turning point of the game. It starts with Pixy lagging behind the player instead of upper formation at the start like he usually is. PJ and the other characters notice this and inquire if he has mechanical issues, but he doesn't, and his attitude seems to reflect his absolute lack of enthusiasm for this mission, possibly inspired by the events of Hoffman. With him commenting the war would just end if they blew everything up. The Belkans then proceed to start launching a nuclear attack, which they presume is headed for Ustio, which would be the most likely target. Cypher and Crow Team head along, but in a spectacular showing of gameplay impacting story narrative, or reflecting story narrative rather, Pixy won't respond to the player's commands like he did before during the attack, indicating something is wrong. Instead of going for Ustio, however, Belka detonates 7 nukes along its border to stop Allied forces advancing. During this, Pixy receives a communication from another Allied pilot, and then fires on Cypher, claiming to have found his reason to fight. Afterwards, Pixy flies out of the map while Cypher has to deal with reinforcements, and then his last message is that they are going their separate ways and will not meet again. So players throughout Ace Combat had grown used to the system of AI wingmen being completely loyal and interesting characters that developed throughout the course of the entire game. Pixy had been built up as a true ally and even your buddy after most of the missions, and was showing some interesting development in those players' minds as Hoffnung, which would have been his character development point in the story. His betrayal was quite new and pretty unique for the series. There are no direct mentions of Pixy for all the missions leading up to Mission 18, who was replaced by PJ. Hints were made available to the player about Pixy's eventual fate, including reception of a coded message with his catchphrase after downing in Mission 15 of the advanced Belka prototype XB0. But except for passing mention by PJ, there's nothing direct. Another interesting thing to note about these passing mentions is that they seem to indicate that the Pixy just left without any recognition of him firing on Cypher. As Crow Team and the others left the area of operations right after the nuclear bombing, this suggests that Cypher didn't tell anyone that Pixy had fired on him, so that he would preserve his image. And it also somewhat indicates that Cypher refuses to acknowledge that Pixy had actually betrayed him. Mission 17 has Cypher and PJ stopping a nuclear annihilation of several cities by an organization called the World with No Boundaries, which was an organization that sprung up with the belief that the removal of borders between countries would stop the ultra-nationalism that had led to the Balkan War and all the destruction entailed, namely Hoffnung and the nuclear attacks known as the Seven Pillars. In a cutscene afterwards, when PJ is celebrating, Pixy appears in an experimental jet and kills him with his TLS, or Tactical Laser System special weapon. In doing so, Pixy has killed what was, metaphorically, a symbol of hope and a future of the war afterwards that would have been bright and hopeful, which was PJ's main purpose in the story, and instead ensures the cycle of history that strange real universe will now endure under all the other Ace Combat games. After shooting him down, he is probably one of the best intro lines for any final boss in all the games. Pixy engages Cypher in a fight to the death, which is charged with emotion as Pixy didn't want to kill Cypher but still wanted to achieve his goals. This is also reflected in gameplay style, as after the first phase where you disable his TLS and he starts launching multi-purpose burst missiles, he fires them in a sort of flare-like motion to dissuade Cypher from attacking, almost as if he doesn't want to directly kill Cypher, but just buy enough time for V2 to launch. For Cypher, he needs to stop the launch, and it is revealed that Pixy is controlling the launch, so to stop the launch, Cypher must kill Pixy. Pixy succeeds in launching the warhead, telling Cypher that the world's habit to fall into war makes it a lost cause. Pixie's plane now enters a phase where to destroy it, the player, Cypher, must joust it head-on in the style of a knight. This gesture represents the culmination of all the Arthurian mythology present in the game. During the fight, Pixie is saying that he and Cypher may have a resemblance, but never face the same way, in the same way that the two faces of the coins may be similar, of the same coin may be similar, but will never face the same way either. This alludes to the fact that though he was a wingman earlier in the game, he had independently gone his own way, and was now facing Cypher as an enemy. Pixie eventually loses, which results in the destruction of this jet and the detonation of the warhead before it impacted. As they are facing head-on, Cypher and Pixie are headed up a collision course. Cypher pulls to the side, but Pixie could have just headed straight on and taken Cypher down with him. Instead, he also pulls to the side, indicating that perhaps Pixie still didn't want to directly kill Cypher, and decides that Cypher needs to survive. Pixie is the final interview cutscene in the game, as mentioned earlier, which shows that he has survived the destruction of Jet and traveled a different continent to continue working as a mercenary. During the interview, he explains that he now wants to find out what purpose borders serve and why people still fight for them, in the manner of Cypher, and how the trust that is so vital in a peaceful world will never happen. This kind of foreshadows the fact that all the other Ace Combat games also involve the world falling into conflict, just like not on the scale of the Balkan War, of the same nature. He then says his final message to Cypher.
Yo, buddy. Still alive? And thanks, friend. See you again.
This message is a reference to Zero's nature as a prequel, and how the player will still also plays all other main characters throughout the other games, hence the see you again. So Pixie is an interesting character, and a unique one within the context of Ace Combat's games. He showed the player that the AI they take for granted in-game possessed independent story traits that could result in gameplay and game progression changes. He's become iconic among the game's community and others for his uniqueness of character and how he doesn't follow a simple story pattern with the betrayal in others. He also contributes towards the theme of Ace Combat Zero, which is the impact of war on the people who have participated. This is why the documentary style of cutscenes exists, as it's a showing of what the encounters with Cypher did to those people, and how they were impacted by the different styles that he played as. Namely, they feared him as mercenary, respected him as soldier, and with some were even thankful for him as a knight.